It was Easter Sunday, April 9th, 2023, and I was visiting my aunt's house just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, where she held her annual Easter egg hunt. Her property stretched into a dense patch of woods that bordered the back of the yard, and every year part of the thrill was that some of the eggs would be hidden deep in the trees. I'd spent so many Easters there as a kid, and though I was now in my early 20s, tradition demanded I come home for it. This year felt different. The sky was unusually overcast, casting everything in a dull grey tone, and there was an unsettling stillness in the woods, the kind that made the air feel too heavy to breathe properly. When the hunt started, all the kids ran off, screaming and laughing, baskets swinging in their hands. I stood near the tree line, sipping a cup of coffee, watching them disappear into the thicket. After a few minutes, my aunt came over, nudging me with her elbow, teasing that I should get in there and help the younger ones. Grinning, I gave in and followed the trail, kicking through leaves and bending down to peek behind rocks and under old tree stumps. That's when I spotted it. A huge, perfectly polished Easter egg, much larger than the others. It sat unnaturally in the crook of a tree root, almost gleaming despite the lack of sun. It was painted with strange, intricate designs I didn't recognize, not the pastel flowers and bunnies typical of Easter, but jagged black shapes and spirals that made my stomach twist. As I reached for it, something moved in my peripheral vision. At first I thought it was a kid running by, but when I turned I saw no one, only the forest, silent and thick. My heart picked up a beat, but I shook it off, grabbing the egg. It was surprisingly heavy, almost too heavy for its size. The surface was ice cold, even though the air was warm and humid. I tucked it under my arm and started walking back, feeling a sharp sense of urgency I couldn't explain. Halfway back to the clearing, I noticed footprints alongside mine, but they weren't normal footprints. They were too large, too deep, shaped oddly like a rabbit's, but massive, as if some enormous creature had been hopping through the trees. They ran parallel to me, then veered sharply into the woods. Curiosity and a growing sense of dread compelled me to follow them. I walked for what felt like an hour, deeper and deeper, until I found myself standing in a hollow clearing I had never seen before. At the center of the clearing stood an old, decaying wooden statue of an Easter bunny, but not the cute kind you see at the mall. This bunny was grotesque, its ears drooping and splintered, its grin carved into a hideous sneer. Its eyes were hollow and dark. Surrounding the statue were dozens of other strange eggs, identical to the one I had found. My chest tightened with panic. Something wasn't right. I dropped the egg immediately, hearing it thud against the ground with a sickening sound, almost like flesh. As I turned to leave, the air around me seemed to shift. The trees groaned and leaned inward. The light dimmed to a near twilight. Then I heard it, a scraping sound, low and grating, getting closer and closer. I whipped around and saw it, a towering figure, half human, half bunny, its body stitched together like some terrible taxidermy experiment, lurching toward me from behind the statue. Its mouth hung open, rows of jagged teeth glinting in the dim light. One of its hollow black eyes seemed to lock onto me. I ran. I sprinted harder than I ever had, dodging branches, tearing through brambles, my hands slick with sweat. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear it, the rhythmic thumping of heavy feet behind me, gaining on me, the sound of wheezing breath, the occasional snap of tree limbs too high off the ground for anything human to hit. I stumbled back into the yard, heart hammering, and found the party still going on, children laughing, adults chatting like nothing was wrong. When I looked down at my hands, I realized they were empty. Somewhere in the woods I had dropped the strange egg. I tried to tell my aunt, but she just laughed, assuming I was joking. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing that stitched-together monstrosity. At around 3 a.m., I heard something outside my window, a soft scratching, deliberate and slow. When I pulled back the curtain, there on the windowsill sat one of those strange black spiraled eggs. No sign of who or what had left it. I never went back to that Easter gathering again. On April 17th, 2022, I spent Easter weekend at my friend Mason's place in a small town just outside Reno, Nevada. His neighborhood had a tradition where all the families would host a massive block party, with food stands, games, and even a scavenger hunt that ran late into the night. It was my first time joining, and I was looking forward to it, especially after how isolating the last few months had been for me. The houses on Willow Lane were older, mostly built in the 1950s, and a lot of them sat empty, their paint peeling and yards overgrown. Still, something about the crumbling porches and leaning fences gave the whole street a weird kind of charm. The scavenger hunt was the highlight of the night. Everyone gathered in front of Mason's house just after sunset, and each participant got a list of strange clues that led to hidden Easter tokens scattered throughout the neighborhood. Most were hidden in obvious places, under flower pots, inside mailboxes, but one clue stood out. It simply read, "Find the house where Easter never ended." Nobody else seemed to know what it meant, and most brushed it off, chasing the easier prizes. But something about that phrase gnawed at me, so I decided to look for it myself. After an hour of wandering, I stumbled to the far end of the block where the houses became more abandoned, more forgotten. That's when I saw it. A crumbling two-story house with plastic Easter decorations still dangling from the windows, their colors faded and cracked. A sagging wooden bunny leaned against the porch, and wilted pastel streamers fluttered weakly in the wind. It looked like no one had touched it in decades. I hesitated at the broken gate, but the scavenger hunt sheet buzzed in my hand, daring me forward. I pushed the gate open with a groan and stepped onto the porch, feeling the wood creak under my weight. The chill laced the air, despite the warm night. The door was slightly ajar. For reasons I couldn't explain, I stepped inside. The house smelled of mildew and something far worse, something metallic and sour. The living room was decorated as if it were still 1987. Dusty plastic eggs strewn across the floor, a broken-down Easter tree in the corner, and faded streamers hanging like spider webs from the ceiling. What froze me in place wasn't the decor. It was the figure sitting in the rocking chair near the fireplace. Dressed in an ancient, moth-eaten Easter bunny costume, it faced away from me, its head drooping low as if it had fallen asleep decades ago. I was about to back out quietly when the figure began to rock, slowly at first, then faster, creaking louder and louder. I stumbled backward, my shoe catching on a loose floorboard. That's when it turned its head toward me. The costume's face was cracked and peeling, but beneath it, I glimpsed something far worse. A hollow eye socket, dark and empty, staring right at me. The front door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. I bolted, heart hammering deeper into the house as the sound of dragging footsteps scraped behind me. I found myself in a long hallway lined with closed doors, each one covered in childish Easter drawings, eggs, chicks, bunnies. But they were wrong. The drawings were smeared, twisted, as if they had been drawn in panic. I tried the first door, locked, then the second, also locked. The third one creaked open, revealing a child's bedroom untouched by time. A rotting Easter basket sat at the foot of the bed, filled with what looked like old shriveled candies. As I stepped inside, I heard whispering. Faint at first, like the rustle of paper, but it grew louder, closer. It wasn't one voice, but many, chanting something I couldn't understand. I spun around and saw them, small figures, like children, standing in the corners of the room. Their faces were blank, no eyes, no mouths, just smooth skin where features should have been. They wore tattered Easter outfits, stained and decayed. They stepped forward in unison, hands reaching out. I bolted from the room and sprinted down the hallway, trying every door, until one finally gave way into the kitchen. The air was thick with rot. Mold climbed the walls in black streaks. In the center of the kitchen table sat a giant chocolate bunny, larger than any I had ever seen, its surface cracked and oozing something dark. As I stared at it, the bunny's head twitched and split, revealing a gaping maw filled with writhing black worms. Something cold and clammy wrapped around my wrist. I screamed and jerked away, slamming into a cabinet and knocking over a tower of ancient, rotted Easter baskets. I scrambled to my feet and hurled myself through the nearest window, the glass tearing into my arms as I hit the ground hard outside. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of Mason's porch, gasping for air. I turned back to look at the end of the street. The house on Willow Lane was gone. In its place was an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. No broken bunny statue, no sagging porch, no faded decorations. Just an empty, yawning space like it had never existed. I never mentioned it to anyone. What could I say? That I had entered a house that wasn't there, chased by faceless children and a rotting Easter bunny? They would have laughed. But every Easter now, without fail, I find a plastic egg on my front porch. Cracked, faded. And when I open it, there's always a slip of paper inside. It says the same thing every year. See you soon. On April 9th, 2023, I was visiting my aunt in a small, almost forgotten town in rural Pennsylvania. It was the kind of place where everybody knew each other and traditions were held sacred, no matter how strange they seemed to outsiders. That Easter Sunday, the town square was packed with families celebrating, kids darting between booths, people laughing and sharing homemade food. At the center of it all was a man in an old-fashioned yellow Easter bunny suit leading the festivities. His costume wasn't the kind you see in big city parades. It was faded, stitched up in places, and the head was slightly lopsided, giving it a permanent, unsettling tilt. Still, nobody seemed to mind. To them, he was just part of the charm. My aunt was busy helping at a cake stall, so I wandered around alone, soaking in the old-timey vibe. I noticed something odd after about an hour. No matter where I went, the booths, the playground, the tiny petting zoo, the yellow-suited bunny was always nearby. He never said anything, never handed out candy like the others, just stood off to the side, his head cocked like he was watching. I told myself it was just coincidence, small town, small event, but when I ducked into a narrow alley between two old shops to take a break, I froze. He was already there at the end of the alley, waiting, his head slowly tilted further, almost touching his shoulder. I backed out quickly and blended into a group of teenagers hanging out by the fountain. When I glanced back, the alley was empty. My heart was still hammering, though, and a cold sweat clung to the back of my neck. I tried to shrug it off, but the feeling stayed with me, that someone or something was watching far too closely. As the sun set, the town organized an Easter twilight hunt in the old park at the edge of town. I didn't really want to go, but the teenagers insisted, teasing me for being scared. Not wanting to seem like a coward, I agreed. The park was massive, wild in some areas, and by nightfall it felt like the trees themselves were leaning closer. We each got tiny flashlights and a map with riddles leading to hidden eggs. The rules were simple: stay within the park's bounds and don't leave the trails. It wasn't long before I lost sight of the others. Their laughter drifted in and out between the trees, getting fainter as I wandered deeper. My flashlight beam flickered, barely illuminating the twisting dirt path, and that's when I saw it again. The flash of yellow through the trees. I called out, thinking maybe one of the teens was pranking me, but there was no response. Only the soft rustle of the wind through dry leaves. My hands gripped the flashlight tighter as I pressed forward, heart thudding in my ears. Every few steps, there it was again, a glimpse of that yellow fabric, slipping just out of sight, always staying just far enough away to keep me moving. The trail forked ahead. The left path was well trodden and well lit by the glow of hanging lanterns. The right path, however, was darker, half overgrown, almost daring me to step into it. As I hesitated, the yellow figure appeared again. This time clearly, standing motionless down the dark path, one gloved paw beckoning slowly. I don't know what possessed me to follow. Maybe it was fear, maybe curiosity. Either way, I turned down the overgrown path, feeling branches scrape against my arms. The air grew colder with every step, the trees pressing closer until they blocked out the stars completely. My flashlight sputtered and died. I smacked it against my palm uselessly before stuffing it into my pocket. The only light came from the faint glint of something ahead. Not lanterns, not moonlight. It was a row of tiny glowing eggs, laid out in a perfect line leading to a clearing. Against every instinct, I followed them. The clearing was small, barely large enough for a few people. At the center was a stone well, ancient and crumbling, choked with dead vines. Sitting on the lip of the well was the yellow bunny. Now that I was closer, I saw the truth. The costume wasn't just old, it was soaked in something dark, something that left stiff brown stains along the seams. The face of the bunny sagged unnaturally, like it was stitched too loosely over something underneath. Slowly it lifted its head to face me fully. There was no human face beneath the mask, just a cavernous hollow, black and endless. Before I could run, the figure jerked upright and pointed one trembling paw at the well. A sound rose from the depths, not water but whispering. Hundreds of voices, desperate, pleading. Against all reason, I inched forward, peering over the edge. Far, far below, I saw them. Faces. Pale, wide-eyed faces staring up at me. Some were children, some adults, their hands reaching toward the surface. Their mouths opened in silent screams. I staggered back, but it was too late. The bunny lunged, pushing me forward. I woke up lying on the dirt path, flashlight clutched in my hand, the sounds of the town square drifting faintly through the trees. My watch said I'd been missing for nearly 3 hours. When I stumbled back to the square, nobody believed me. They said I must have gotten lost and panicked. But when I pulled my map out of my pocket, I saw something scrawled in the margins in thick, sticky ink. Next Easter, your turn to lead. If these chilling tales kept you on edge, imagine what else lurks just beyond the light. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true horror stories. And hit the bell icon, because the next nightmare could be closer than you think.